I've got a letter today from a young man who overcame a dysfunctional childhood and an early porn addiction in order to reclaim his life as an adult and his sexual health. He writes, "Hey Noah, I'd like to tell you my story with pornography because it might be a little different from the ones I've seen on your channel so far. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. My dad, to this day, has an undiagnosed mental illness, and I lived with him until my coming of age. As you can guess, my childhood was quite complicated. The fact is, he knew since I was little about my homosexuality, maybe even before I started questioning myself. He was never explicitly homophobic to me, but he'd do subtle things here and there to try and correct me, and one of them was introducing me to porn. When I was a kid, he'd leave adult magazines around the house, exposing me to the photos of nude women on their covers. You might think this can just be coincidental or sloppy, but over time he'd do other things that would confirm his attempts to steer me in what he thought was the right direction. During my early teens, my dad bought a computer and got an internet connection. The computer was not in the living room, as it happened to many other guys born in the 90s. Instead, it was in his den, which meant more privacy. When he was using the computer, he'd sometimes call me over, and as I entered the room, he'd show me a photo of a woman in her underwear. I'd just turn around and leave the room, which he found annoying. It also made me feel guilty and ashamed for not being turned on by women. This all sounds uncomfortable and, yeah, manipulative. And I'm sorry that that was the way your father chose to approach sexuality with you. Other times, if he was using the computer and I wanted to use it after him, he'd leave about a dozen browser windows open. There were no tabs yet at that time, with photos of women in their underwear or even topless. I would just close everything to do other things, but all of this normalized the use of pornography in my head. I learned that it's fine and common to consume that kind of material. And another fatherly lesson attempt backfires. Around those years, I also started figuring out I was gay, but sexuality was a taboo at home, and many kids at school were homophobes. Some of them had been insulting me for a couple of years, even before my sexual awakening, which added to the shame and the guilt. Yeah, we can only do our own small part to help culture evolve to understand various sexual orientations, as well as to discuss in a mature way the impacts of things like pornography use and masturbation. We can lead by example. You can, if you choose to, go public like me, talk about this stuff. But there's only so far that we as individuals can push culture. But we do have a lot more power and influence in our own families. And it's my hope that people like you and me, who grew up in families that didn't know how to talk about these issues, we do a better job when we start having kids. So what was the perfect outlet to satisfy my curiosity and to calm my need to experiment with boys at my age? Yep, it was porn, but not the kind my father wanted me to watch. I started masturbating to gay porn at 13 and all throughout my teenage years, whenever I'd find the time and privacy to do so. At 18, I went to college, left home, and got my own laptop, which meant no limitations. So I started edging to porn for 1, 2, or sometimes 3 hours. It took me a while to start sleeping with other men. In my teenage years, my environment was definitely to blame for this. But once I got to college, pornography kept me in its lonely bubble, and real-life sex was very scarce. One narrative I often have heard is that porn can provide a safe way to explore one's sexuality, especially for people who are LGBTQ. And that may be true in some cases. I'm not going to dispute that sometimes an individual can clarify their sexual orientation by exploring what interests them in online pornography. But as you're learning from this person's account, there are so many hazards to it as well that are especially dangerous if people aren't educated about those dangers, right? If we know the dangers, we can keep our eyes open. We can recognize when we're starting to go in the wrong direction. But when we're not educated, we can fall into these traps very easily, especially when we're starting to use porn at age 13 like this person, or age 9 or 10 like me. And it becomes extremely sex negative. And I think a lot of those people who say that narrative, oh, it allows young people to explore their sexuality in a safe way, they would, I think of themselves as sex positive. But there's nothing more sex negative than being so addicted to porn that your body doesn't work, doesn't function correctly for real sex, or that you just have no practice or idea of how to socialize or form a real relationship with a physical person who's right in front of you. Things kept getting worse over the next few years. I developed an anxiety disorder due to my childhood, and today I can see it, also fueled by edging to porn. I also developed PIED, that's porn-induced erectile dysfunction, but for some time I didn't even consider it could be related to my addiction. I started therapy a couple of years ago, and fortunately it has helped me realize how pornography messed up with my brain and my body. I'm glad therapy helped you to realize that. I think at least a significant amount of therapists are still under the impression that pornography can't be something that causes problems like sexual dysfunction or relationship issues, or can't become a compulsion or an addiction, depending on the verbiage people like to use. But there are a lot of them out there who have educated themselves about the potential hazards of porn use and are able to help you make those connections and get to the root of what keeps you coming back to sexual junk food, porn, instead of forming real, satisfying, romantic and sexual relationships in your life. On March this year, something clicked in my head. I realized porn no longer satisfied me. Whenever I finished, my mind started reeling and suddenly felt very vulnerable, insecure, and afraid. I had already tried to quit a couple of times these previous years, but it was only a matter of days before I relapsed. However, this time around, days passed and somehow I'd found the will to keep going. I also wrote down a list with pros and cons of masturbating with and without porn, and the pros outnumber the cons by far. I'm not refraining from masturbation. I know it takes longer to reboot, and sometimes I still struggle with porn fantasies, but I think quitting pornography and edging is a huge achievement for now. Hey, congratulations on taking the reins back on your own life. I think as we age into our 20s, I'm not sure exactly how old you are now, but our brains become more and more developed, especially in the prefrontal cortex, that area of the brain most responsible for rational thought, foreseeing consequences, risk assessment, things like that. We can age into being better able to see just how destructive our behavior has been, and we can see much more clearly what's right and what's wrong for getting us closer to our goals and our aspirations. And I won't credit that 100% with your realization. You said in March something clicked and you realized that porn was no longer satisfying to you, but it can be part of it. Right? You can, as you age, learn and be able to gain that new ability to see those things more clearly and make choices that are more mature and more in line with your long-term goals. Also, I'm with you on porn-free masturbation. Yes, I do believe it can be a healthy part of someone's life, even someone who's in recovery from a pornography addiction. And there are guidelines that you should keep in mind to keep you on the path that's going to prevent you from sliding down a slippery slope back into addictive use of porn and masturbation. But it can come with a lot of benefits as well. It can give you a sexual outlet, sexual expression, a way to explore your own inner sexuality and your inner fantasies, as long as you're staying away from that imagery and from porn-inspired fantasies. And that can help someone to become porn-free, get some distance between themselves and the last time that they've consumed porn. And for most of the people I work with, it's really the online porn that is the source of a lot of their problems, not masturbation itself. It's not to say that all masturbation is going to be healthy. That's why it's important to educate yourself about what those guidelines should be and to really think it through and decide on your own boundaries with porn-free masturbation. But if you want help doing that, you can look to a video on my channel called Is Masturbation Healthy or Not? And watch that one after this. Today, I've been porn-free for 5 months and counting with 0 relapses. My PIED is gone. I've never performed this good in bed. I'm starting to see men as more than a penis attached to a body, and to understand that sometimes I need more tenderness and affection from them rather than sexual interaction. Also, my anxiety has decreased, and I expect it to go down further over time. After all, reversing 20 years of pornography consumption might take a while. Your videos are helping me a great deal. I watch them at night, and they help me replace that leisure time after dinner that triggers my desire to PMO. I know I'm not alone in this fight. Thank you so much for your content. Take care. Anon. Wow. Well, great job. 5 months is an amazing foundation for the rest of your life. Don't get complacent. I've seen a lot of people after 6 months, a year, even 2 years, slide back, reopen that door to using porn, and invite all those problems back into their lives, have to go through the recovery process again, go through the withdrawals, the major cravings, get through all those humps a second time, or a third time, or a 10th time. So don't get complacent. Just keep your head on straight. Keep your eyes on your goal of the kind of life that you really want to live, and keep your peripheral vision active and alert for those dangers and those warning signs that you might be slipping back into your old behaviors. But amazing job building that foundation. Keep on going, keep that momentum up, and thank you for sharing this story. I had someone recently on the channel ask for more stories of successful recovery from PIED. So when I saw your letter, I thought, okay, great, this one will be a good one to share. And you bring in that perspective of non-heterosexuality, which I think is important to share stories of all different types and different nuances, because we all have a lot in common. Like, all of us here on this channel are here because we're trying to live our best lives. We're trying to leave pornography behind and recover our brains and our health. And it's important that we honor what we have in common, but also recognize that we're all on our own separate journeys. And what works for someone or what applies to one person doesn't necessarily apply to another. So thanks for sharing. If you're out there, this story resonated with you, you want to accomplish what this man accomplished, you want to be porn-free, you want to recover your sexual function, you can explore all the resources that I provide on my website. Go to the link tree down below. You can watch a bunch of free videos. You can get my PDF of my book for free. You can look into joining the support group that I run. You can get one-on-one coaching with me. You can even get online video courses that walk you through step by step everything you need to do and learn and develop in your life in order to be permanently porn-free and have a healthy sex life. That's all for today. See you next time.